Hi, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I think we'll get started in the interest of time. Welcome to our webinar today on salary survey, hopefully clarifying a few misunderstandings perhaps, and also using the opportunity to share some of our experiences around salary surveys, what we have done, what we are proposing to do, and some of the questions I've actually gotten from the companies in Pakistan on the salary survey that we have launched, right? So before we get into the details, let me qualify that this is a very specific webinar, designed to really talk about the salary survey that we've launched in Pakistan. And there are two parts of this. The first one is that I have been speaking to a number of companies around the salary survey and what we're aiming to do with our survey and what the deliverables are. One of the questions that keep coming up is around the peer group, right? And obviously, for most companies, they're interested to know if companies in their industry, some of the peer companies that they use in terms of losing talent to, in terms of hiring from, if they're participating or not. And obviously, that got me thinking because in my own experiences, the peer group is important. The companies in the industry is important, but I think there is a part to it which is very, very important, is around the size of the market. And so there are two aspects that I want to cover specifically today in the webinar. And please bear with me if you're not from a compensation background. I'm going to try and be a bit more technical because I think I need to explain that point of view to help you understand and answer the questions some of the companies have around the salary survey. Now, let me start by saying that some of the things that I'm hoping to share are specifically targeted towards what we like to call a smaller survey market, right? So what that means is that there are many markets like Pakistan. You can take many of the emerging markets, Vietnam, Indonesia, in the Middle East, African countries, even some of the South American countries, many of the Asian countries, where the overall market has not increased a lot. There are not a lot of unique roles, and most companies are of a certain size, right? Now, if you think about the larger markets in the world, you take the US market, you take China, you take India, you take some of the European markets, right? These markets are not only huge in terms of how local companies are operating domestically, but you also have a lot of multinationals who have huge presence in these markets, right? So you take India as an example in terms of technology. Obviously, you have companies with thousands of employees, a lot of global roles operating out of there. You think about China as a domestic market. You have tens of thousands of employees working in China doing all sorts of roles, right? And then US as well. To that extent, even a UK for that matter, which has a quite sizable global and regional presence, right? These markets is what we like to call mature, right? Because you have a lot of roles in a lot of companies operating in these markets. So the purpose of this discussion today is to really talk about what happens in a smaller market, for example, and I'll use Pakistan as an example. So please bear with me as I share, some of our learnings and some of my thinking around, why the concept of peer group is a little bit less relevant in a market like this. That's point number one. But that doesn't mean that we should not be concerned about the peer market. And the second part of the webinar, like I said, is I want to share with you what we actually need to supplement or complement the survey data that we get. Okay. I hope all of you can see my screen. I actually thought I'll actually share with you, one of the things that we did a few years back. And so what you can see on the left, right, is basically, again, just for comparison purposes, this is what we call a grade mapping table. And I've just shared like Hewitt, Mercer PC in the olden days, and Mercer APIT, which is also the new Mercer grading methodology, to show how do we compare, and this is my ranking, my company's ranking, right? So even if you ignore that, how does Mercer compare with Towers Watson, compares with Hewitt versus the Mercer APIT grading structure? Okay, that's one part of the equation. I have actually used one of the surveys we did a few years back. I've actually used the actual grading structure without obviously naming the company, right? Looking at the size of the company, right? The methodology states we look at the size of the company in US dollars, and we equate the size of the company to where the CEO needs to be benchmarked, right? Now, you can see there are 8 companies in the consumer sector here, FMCG, yeah? And as you can see, that these are of different sizes, obviously. You have a couple of large companies with revenues of about $500 million. You have a number of companies that are between 250 to $100 million. And you've got one company that's about $25 million, right? And if you think about the global methodology of how we benchmark companies, so we have used the company size as one. And what we have done here is, for example, in FMCG1, we have used their grading structure to map it with the global survey providers right now, whether it's Mercer, whether it's Hewitt, all of that. And we have done the same for 2, 3, 4, all the way to 8, right? This is actual mapping, by the way. So this is not hypothetical. This is actual mapping. Now, the point that I want to make around peer group is peer group will make sense. Peer group will become handy, and the data points in peer group will make sense if you have enough companies of a certain size, right, for each of these 3 groups. So for example, rather than only having 2 companies here, so if you think about the senior roles, there are only 2 companies here, which what we can qualify as large companies, right? So if you're a large company and you're like, oh, I want a peer group of equivalent size companies in my industry, right? There are only 2 companies right now. So for a lot of executive roles, right? Junior roles, no problem, because you can see here, you've got a lot of mapping here. But for senior roles, for large companies, they really only have 2 comparisons right now. Okay. You think about the middle-sized companies, you still have, you can say all of these are in the middle. So you've got a slightly larger group, 4 or 5 companies in the what we call the mid-sized companies. Then again, the problem becomes if you're a small company, right, you actually have no competitors. The CEO position is already what we would like to compare to a sub-functional head position for a large company, right? I'm not going to get too technical in terms of how we map the roles, but hopefully the chart shows you visually, right, how the company sizes make it difficult. If you have, rather than 8 here, if you had 80 companies or 40 companies, then you know that mathematically you will have probably 8 to 10 large companies, maybe about 20 middle-sized companies, and maybe about 10 small companies, right? So that peer group in a smaller market, again, that's my point I'm trying to make, in a smaller market like ours in Pakistan and similar markets, it becomes difficult to have too many companies in the same industry, point number 1. So even if you go multi-industry, right, then whether you do multi-industry or you do all industry, it does not matter in my experience. Okay, you can say that in a market like Pakistan, I wanted to have the top 15 or top 12 or 15 companies in the country. You'll have 3, let's say, consumer companies, 2 pharma companies, I don't know, 3 banks, 2 oil and gas, things like that, right? In another way, this is actually all industry. All you're doing is you're creating a peer group, which is an all industry representation. But what you're doing is that you're nitpicking or handpicking companies that are more relevant to you. The question, in my experience, is that what would be interesting in terms of the survey result would be to check how all industry data differs from the peer group, again, which is all industry, between 12 to 15 companies. Now, I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to talk about a separate point here, which is linked to this. Now, if you look at the CEO spread here, okay, and I'm going to use Mercer PC from the old days, you can see that the spread is all the way from 60 to 67. And these are only 8 companies, okay? And if you think about the functional head roles for this group, it is anywhere from 64 all the way to 55, which is quite a big spread. Now, the challenge is that even if you create a peer group of your liking, okay, there is a very high chance, again, based on my experience, that some of the executive or senior roles that you have in your company, you might not find enough data points for them. Okay, and I'm going to come to that, the other side of it later on. Now you extrapolate that for many roles, right? So I'll give you an example. If you move this to jobs, okay, and I'm using two jobs here only. There's a very typical job called product development role in most of the consumer companies, okay? These are the guys who work in supply chain. They're actually part of R&D, right? Now, the challenge is that in a peer group that you're looking for, like 12, 15 companies, which is all industry, right? If you're a consumer company, you're probably going to find a product development role only in 3 companies in your peer group. Okay. There might be a product development guy, but it's going to be a product development person in another industry. So it's not really apples to apples. Then again, a large company might have a product development role at a middle managerial level. Another company might not have product development at all because if it's an MNC, for example, it's happening somewhere outside, right? Second example, you take a consumer insight role, the head of consumer insight. Chances are that the head of consumer insight role only exists for consumer-like companies. Again, a head role might only be applicable to 1 or 2 companies, right? You take media as an example, right? Not most companies actually don't have a media department, and if they do, it's like 1 or 2 people at the managerial level reporting to the head of marketing, right? Point I'm trying to make with all of this is that as you think about your peer group, as you extrapolate the size of companies, as you think about a multi-industry peer group, right? The roles that you have in your company in an all industry perspective in your peer group are probably not going to be able to find enough matches. And that is unfortunately a example or a challenge with a small market like Pakistan from a survey perspective. And like I said, the same applies in other markets. I have enough experience with Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, similar markets in the Middle East, where the market number of roles, distinct roles, are not enough, and you don't have a lot of companies of certain size operating in that environment. And inherently, that causes a little bit of a problem in terms of when we talk about data matches in the same industry, but also in the peer group that you're looking for. So that's one part of the problem, right? That's one, not a problem perhaps, but that's one challenge. The recommendation I have is, again, which I've been sharing with most companies that I've spoken to, is that what you want to do is to, of course, participate in the survey, right? Put less emphasis on that peer group that you're looking for. Okay. And I'm gonna talk about the second part of the challenge that we have in the peer group. I'm only showing this, and I don't mean no disrespect, but if you think about Mercer Job Library as an example, I have taken one job, which is an accounting job in finance, right? If you look at how many jobs there are 24 jobs in the accounting function within finance, right? Now, yes, you can see here that all of these jobs have different titles. You have in accounting, let me take, sorry, these are all accounting, okay? You have all these jobs that are something to do with accounting, okay? Now, the question I have is, in a market like Pakistan, how many different kinds of accounting job do you think we have? Okay, my experience says there's only one. Accounting is accounting. Controller is different, tax is different, treasury is different, business partnering is different. Accounting ultimately is only one job, okay? And this is inherently the other challenge that we have. When you divide accounting into so many different groups, and this is, by the way, only the executive level, this is not even the management and professional level, it becomes very hard for us to pinpoint exactly what that one job is where most companies can match, right? If you have 25 or 30 companies, okay, they're all going to look at all these titles, they're going to read what makes sense to them, and they're going to pick. So what is going to happen is you will have 25 or 30 companies or even 50 companies picking up, let's say, 8 different job titles here, okay? And that goes into the survey. So you combine challenge number one, which is different size of companies, right? Not enough. And then you have the dilution of benchmarks, all right? And if you combine both of these together, the challenge is you don't get enough data points, you don't get enough data matches, okay? And unfortunately, in my experience as well, you don't get answers. The survey provider is not able to tell you exactly what the issue is, because you're like, oh, I'm benchmarking with all the companies that are relevant to me, right? How am I not getting matches? Or if the matches I'm getting 2 or 3 data points only for each of these jobs. In summary, what I'm trying to show you is that inherently it's a market size challenge. Unless we had 500 companies of equal sizes, right? Large, small, and medium, where you just have enough volume to divide the roles, that could solve the problem. And then number two, because you have so much dilution in the survey, what we call a job benchmark title, it becomes very difficult to control. Like, how do you make sure that everybody in accounting is choosing the same or one or two accounting titles only? As you saw, you've got 24 options only in the executive levels, right? You bring management paraprofessionals, we're talking about a lot of jobs. Ultimately, it's only accounting, but it does not help, right? So that's those are the two challenges. So what is the solution? The solution is basically twofold. First one, I would say I'm not discounting the fact that peer group is not important. Peer group is important, but what you need simultaneously with the peer group data is, first part is you need to really have control of the survey data. How is the survey data? How does the survey data look like? Have you analyzed it from 18 different angles? All right. And then the second part comes in, which unfortunately does not exist in the Pakistani market. And something that I'm hoping to introduce, let me share my screen, is the concept of compensation insights and market intelligence. Okay. And I'm just going to share one snapshot with you of what that might look like. Give me, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so what you can probably see is a list here that says list of qualitative and quantitative analytics for the survey. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I'm going to give you a few examples. Okay, let me start with the most obvious and pertinent one that's I think across Pakistan right now. In fact, even in other markets as well, by the way. We know that the tech market in Pakistan, in fact, across the world and in many other markets, in many other countries as well, that the tech industry and the tech function in general is driving a premium. Okay, I've spoken to many software houses in Pakistan. I've spoken to a few startups in the region as well, to one big company in Malaysia as well, recently in the Middle East companies as well. Everybody's struggling to figure out what that pay premium in the tech industry is. Okay, they know they have to pay more, okay, but they don't know exactly what it is. Is it 10% on an average more, 15%, 20%? Why is that important? It's important because when you do your budgeting, okay, you have to factor that in. If I give you a simple example of global tech companies, they actually have a separate budget for tech employees in the tech function, okay, for salaries and for equity as well. In fact, their salary budgets for tech employees is actually higher than not tech employees. Okay, and again, because we're talking about global, it's a little bit more mature. For smaller markets like Pakistan, for similar markets, this level of compensation insights are not available, right? So if I ask, and I've asked this question to many companies, what do you think is the general pay premium for tech jobs? Nobody has an answer. They really want this answer. That's example number one. Example number two, there are many jobs in the market right now, which are actually what we call driving premiums, okay? The demand is more, the supply is not there. Supply is not there. And whatever supply it is good employees, but the requirement is becoming more acute, right? They need more highly skilled people. And to give you the most common and the most obvious example, compensation right now in HR, total rewards, is actually one of the most sought after skill set and experience in the market. I have many companies, HR heads reach out to me and say, hey, do you know somebody in reward? We're looking for, ABCD, this is the profile. And the reality is there are not too many, senior reward professionals in the market. What this means is that this is going to drive a premium like any other skill set. And for many jobs, similarly in Pakistan right now, and you can extrapolate it to other market, there are jobs that have what we call moved to a skills-based pay jobs. That means you have to think about these jobs pay a bit differently. There are some jobs I know where you just don't have enough people. So companies are saying, forget the performance. I just want to know how much I need to pay to get the right person in. Okay, because it impacts attraction, it will impact retention, so on and so forth. These are just two examples. I want to extrapolate that more. Compensation insights are like, we know that, Pakistan is suffering for hyperinflation for the past, 2 years, 3 years now. And, this year looks to be the same. Most companies, I get messages, okay, do you know what other companies are doing? Now, through your network, you find out from your friends, okay, this company did this company did that. There is no structured way right now of knowing what companies are doing. Are they doing it in April? Are they doing it throughout the year? Are they giving a bonus? Are they giving an adjustment? What is the adjustment? Is it 12%? Is it 10%, right? And the reality is, in a hyperinflation environment, you look at the survey result in April, by October, November, the result is already, the data is already irrelevant because 20 companies have gone in June and July and done a salary adjustment. Okay, so that's the other part, that we don't have the compensation insights, the market intelligence to really understand what's happening in the market. I'll give you another example. Cars are a huge deal in Pakistan. For those who are joining from outside Pakistan and those who are in Pakistan, you know that most companies are really struggling with the car prices, right? I've had a few of my friends reach out to me and like, I want to know what other companies are doing and what is the new policy in terms of car management. I know for a fact 2 or 3 companies have actually gone ahead and written a new car policy because they don't know if the car policy or car prices are going to keep increasing. Are they going to become stable? Our typical 4 or 5 year policy is not working anymore, right? Again, at a macro level, at a country level, most companies would really like to know what are other companies doing. And as far as I know, nobody is providing this very specific, this is what car practices and policies are changing. I mean, the survey providers are giving you the entitlement values, what the entitlements are and what the new entitlements are, but change in policy, nobody's captured as far as I know. Then if you look at this list right now, there are things like DE&I, which is, I know for many companies, it's very high on agenda, right? To give you a simple example, and this is something that we did about a few years back, right? We took the salaries and we showed companies how their male versus female salaries were being compared. So if you think about company C, we said, by the way, versus the grades, your females are getting X percentage as a percentage of male. So if it's above 100, that means females are getting more. If it's less than 100, that means females are getting less, right? Because I know many companies have a very, very strong D&I agenda. Pay parity and pay equity, I know, is high on their agenda as well. This one chart shows you how you're comparing with everybody else. Okay, are you ahead? Are you not? Maybe, obviously, this is about 5 years old, but in 2024, maybe most companies have done some work, but there is no way for you to know. And even sometimes companies don't do this analysis themselves. We are able to provide this insight and tell you what you need to know, what you need to do. And this one slide actually tells you what actions you need to take. Similarly, a snapshot in terms of, okay, at an all industry level, which functions are driving premium? I'm not going to explain to you this chart, but you can actually see very clearly in 2 minutes that there are 1 or 2 functions here on average which are driving premiums. Okay, and this is the kind of compensation insights you need, right? Because surveys aren't going to give you that. All right. So if you have, like I said, the survey, which can be all industry, doesn't matter. But if you have compensation insights like these, where you can get a summary and quickly say, okay, it seems project management in general is driving a 15% premium. Okay, technology industry or technology function generally is a 25% premium. Okay, and then what we can actually do more is we can drill down into those functions as well. So let's take technology as an example, right? We know in technology, and 15 years back, you used to only have software developer who used to do 15 things. You have front stack, you have back stack, you have full stack, you have data scientists, you have data engineers, you have AI, you have Python, you have a whole variety of these jobs. And even within these jobs, certain jobs are driving premium. So for companies who have a significant percentage of tech employees or even large software houses, that could mean millions and tens of millions of rupees if you understand what the premiums are, right? So from a financial budgeting perspective, if you had these insights, if you had this data, it would make a huge difference, right? I know many companies who have very stringent financial modeling cycles, and this is the kind of insights you need. So survey is going to give you some indicators. Yeah, you're above or below the market, right? But acute pay analytics or HR analytics insights, unfortunately, they're not to be found right now in the market like Pakistan. And that's something that we're hoping to do. Again, I'm not going to go through this, but there is a lot of compensation insights that we can drive, which can actually then help supplement the survey data that you have. And so my point being, survey data is important, but don't get bogged down that, okay, if I don't get my peer cut, then, oh my God, it makes no sense to me. Peer cut is only one part of the equation. I can share you from my experience, there have been years where the market data was absolute crap. I tried every permutation combination, but the market data was not making sense. I know some of you probably go through that where the market data is so bad, it is actually of no use. This is where compensation insights and market intelligence comes into play. If you had a list of really cool insights, right, you can actually, in some ways, you don't even need survey data for that matter. You can use last year's survey data, use the insights you have in hand, understand what other companies are doing, and then you can decide what you need to do. So I'm going to stop there. I know I've spoken 30 minutes straight, and I'm going to stop and see if anybody has any questions. If I was clear, if you want me to repeat something, happy to do that. Any questions or any comments from anyone? No, no questions. That's quite a surprise. Everything was clear that I explained.
So far, so good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll wait for a minute more. If no other questions, if there is any other compensation or reward related questions that I mean, we have the time, so might as well. If you have any other compensation related questions or concern or some challenge that you're going through, I'm happy to open it up. If you have not had the details for a salary survey and you're interested, please drop me an email or a message, and I'll happy to share the salary survey details with you. But let me open it up and just ask if any of you have any other compensation benefits, total rewards related questions that we can talk through. None? Okay. Okay. We have one question. How do you map salaries for a new role that isn't easily mapped to the market? So great question. So what I would say is one of the global best practices, which is also similar for not just new roles, but for roles where you can't find a map, is to think about what's the closest match you have for this role. So let me take a random example, right? You have a new role, and let me call it data AI architecture. It's a completely new role right now, right? So it's data architecture, but it's going to be balanced off by AI. This is a new role in the market, and you can't get a match for this role, right? What you would do is to think about, is the AI data architecture role more AI, or is it more data architecture for the time being, right? And if you feel that this is more still data architecture because the requirement of the role 70% heavily relies on data architecture experience, you use data architecture role and then you map it. And then hopefully over a period of time, as more companies start to get this role as well, you can start to map it to AI data architecture. But this is again a global best practice. If you can't find a direct match, think about the closest match of that role and you match it. Any other question? Okay, one more. We are a new fintech startup in Pakistan with global presence. How do you ensure? So again, like I said, how do you ensure that salaries are part of the market? You need market data, right? And it doesn't matter which provider you go to. I would say that there are two parts to it. The first one is for you to really understand what kind of roles you have. So, like you said, you're a fintech startup, so you're not going to find a lot of fintech specialized roles in the market unless you have roles that are easily available in the banks, in the finance sector. So understand the roles you have in the market, understand what kind of other companies have similar roles in the market, right? Because for you, you're not going to go and benchmark yourself to consumer companies or pharma companies or oil and gas companies, right? You need to benchmark or compare your roles to the finance sector, whether it's bank, whether it's, I don't know, insurance companies, whether other fintechs. So that's one part of it. If you think that some of the roles can be actually benchmarked because you say that as a fintech, you compete with the best in the market, right? So you might not have, apple to apple comparisons for some of the roles, but you say that, for example, for other roles like finance, for, I don't know, HR, for business development, sales, I would again say in a market like Pakistan, it can be industry independent, right? Because you're a startup, right? You're not going to compare yourself to the large banks, right? So that's where I think a little bit of the reward strategy comes in. You have to figure out first what your reward philosophy is. Who do you want to benchmark to? Who is relevant for you, right? Who do you hire from and who do you lose talent to? So I'm happy to take this offline to give you a little bit more direction, but you need to find first relevancy in terms of your role. Who do you want to compare yourself to? And then find what the market benchmarks are. And again, I know a few of the fintechs, not in Pakistan, in Singapore, who have actually struggled with the same challenge. And my again advice was get the salary market data, but find out the compensation insights. Because I know, for example, in fintech in Singapore, right now there is a little bit of a premium going on for fintech roles. So it might be the case in Pakistan. If you don't have too many people with fintech experience, you might need to apply a premium. I have another question. What best practice would you recommend for benchmarking for the global companies establishing offshore rings in Pakistan, the back office concept? So, it's standard for other companies, other countries as well. India, for example, or even China. They might have what we call the back office roles in Pakistan. But look, ultimately, if the role is based in Pakistan, you have to find competitors in Pakistan. Yeah, Google is opening a customer care office in Pakistan, right? And that's fine. Google has a global methodology, right? But the roles are based in Pakistan of certain sizes or certain grades, and you have to find benchmarks for those. So you have to find out which other companies are relevant for you for that back office, all right? And then find out if they are participating in the surveys, right? Or get again compensation insights around whatever office that you're establishing around the roles. Again, so survey data, again, compensation insights are going to be very, very useful. You might not find very reliable or even good market survey data. And so you don't want to get bogged down just because you don't have survey data. This is where you need compensation insights. Uh, I work in an industry that recruits very niche roles within the arts and culture sector, where compensation takes many forms. Absolutely. Are there any specific points to keep in mind when trying to map niche roles to standard market roles? I will tell you that there might be a possibility that you might not find any competitors at all, right? I'll give you one example from one of my companies I worked for. It was for a pharma company. We were trying to hire for a urologist for our company. It was a senior role, and we found out that it's a very, very niche role in the corporate sector. You don't have a lot of urologists working for corporate sector, right? So we said, okay, what's the closest we can find? What's the closest industry we can find for a urologist? And so we found out that even in the hospitals, there were not a lot of urologists who are willing to work for a corporate sector. We actually had to find a urologist in the US who was willing to work for a corporate company like us in Singapore, right? And as you can expect, there are no benchmarks for this. There are no competitors for this. You have to do a lot of work. You might even have to find out what do these people want? What will it take for it to make it work? That's on the salary. Now, in your sector, I don't have an answer directly, so I'm just going to share with you what I would do. I would figure out what salary works because I don't have any competitors, right? But I would think about, is there any other incentive that I can put them on? I don't know if there's a profit sharing mechanism, if there's a recognition, if there's performance-based, bonuses that you can put in place. Because again, I don't understand your industry, but if it's not salary-based, but it could be some milestone or project basis, you can think about building a compensation package that's salary plus some incentives and performance-based bonuses if they hit certain milestones. We have a question. Should the aging be aging the market data based on forecasted projected salary increase for the coming year? Yes. So you can use both for market data. Think about what the market movement is. So in Pakistan, if it's 10%, you use aging 10% for the market data. If your own budget is 12%, that's the number you use. So market data, market aging for market data, and whatever your budget for next year is, you use that for your aging. Numbeo is a reliable source for cost of living comparisons. I would say yes and no both. If you understand the world of mobility and if you know what the numbers that Numbeo is showing make sense, then I would say absolutely yes. If you don't know anything about global mobility, I would say contact somebody who understands and verify the numbers. Sometimes they can be misleading. Um, I have another question. What is your thoughts about flexi benefits? Can you talk a little bit about some examples and its implementation? So yes, flexible benefits, it's a great tool, I would say. Generally, I would say that given the challenges we have, this is for the first time in the history where we have four generations working, right? We have baby boomers, X, Y, and millennials, or no, millennials and Gen Z, right? Everybody needs something different, right? And as you probably understand, all these four generations have a very different mindset. Their needs are very, very different. I would say flexible benefits or a flexi benefit scheme is a very nice way of providing that little bit extra to all of them in a way that it matters to them personally. You might have a base list of benefits that you offer, like medical insurance and basic health coverage, but you could add a lot of these other what we call supplemental benefits for baby boomers. It might be something around retirement. For Generation X, it might be something around loans or a top up of insurance, right? For youngsters, it might be something around health. So I would say that if you think about a flexi benefit plan, absolutely, I would highly advise, if you don't have, design it in a way that it attracts everybody. Everybody gets to say, everybody gets to contribute as part of it. So it's very personalized, right? Because I can choose what makes sense to me. I can give you another example where you can think about a quantum of money that everybody gets, and they can choose it against a array of benefits or wellness related things that they can, and they can reimburse it from the company. It's not very expensive, and I know in a couple of companies that we've designed this for, that it's very well appreciated, and employees really appreciate that the way they have the flexibility to use that cash against those things. So yes, absolutely, highly recommended. We face a challenge in obtaining market data for defined peer group as those companies are not survey participants in a survey database. How do you tackle this issue? It's a global issue. I mean, I've seen this issue in China and India, in Pakistan as well. Look, there's no I guess there's no way around it as far as salary data is concerned. So I would say two things. First one, if your peer group is not participating in the company, okay, think about the companies again that are relevant to you. They not the direct ones, but that are reasonable names in the market, right? So if you take again whatever industry you belong into, think about the 12 or 15 companies who participate in the survey, and you think they're a good starting point. They pay like you do. They're reasonably good brand names, right? They don't pay too less. They don't pay too much, because if you choose all companies that pay too much, it's going to skew the data. If you choose companies that pay less, it's going to skew the data. So a decent basket that makes sense to you. Okay. Second one, again, I come back to the point. You need market intelligence. You need compensation insights. If your peer groups don't participate in the survey, you need to really know what they do, what their practices are, through your network, through people maybe that you hire, or if you lose people to, you need to collect all that data. I'll give you a simple example from my last company. In Australia, we were the number one e-commerce platform, and unfortunately, six or seven of our peers were not in the e-commerce sector because we were the only dominant player. We had what we call the retailers as our main competitors, right? And some of them were online, some of them were not online. And therefore, it was impossible for us to get these people to participate in the survey. They didn't want to. So what we said was that, okay, we will use a standard e-commerce basket to arrive at a standard value. And then using our own insights and experiences and anecdotal data, we knew how these companies paid, where they paid more, what their allowances were, how they had designed the compensation. And again, because we had market intelligence, we spent time networking, we used our new hire data or resignation data, and we had some general compensation insights from the market. We were able to figure out how to compete with them. Great questions. Any other question? Thank you very much for all these questions. Really, really good questions. Okay, if there are no more questions, then thank you so much for your time. I hope my explanation of the peer group and the relevancy of peer group made sense. And in your own journeys, I would highly recommend, like I said, that in markets, in a small markets like Pakistan, where salary survey data is a bit of a challenge. Don't get fixated on the peer group. Absolutely, it's very important, but I would say what you need equally is the composition insights and market intelligence. So if it's something that you're interested in, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to help. Otherwise, again, thank you so much for attending. Have a great day, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.